Hello, Miss. My name is Cecilia Mariel Valladares and my partner is Ricardo Galvez, and we together are going to explain to you this timeline we made about some different topics from Unit 1 and Unit 2.
Hi, Miss. Good afternoon. My name is Ricardo Galvez. I'm going to talk about the three main topics of Unit 1 of the first unit. The first topic is Britain's prehistory. Britain became an island after the Ice Age. First evidence of human life is a few stone tools dating from one of the warmest periods about the 2050 before Christ, the year 2050. Around 3000 before Christ, 250,000 before Christ year. Around 3000 before Christ, they started building wooden buildings and stone circles. They called them henges. Stone henges is perhaps the world's most famous prehistoric monument. The Romans, the next topic is the Romans They established a Romano-British culture across the southern half of Britain, from the river Humber to the river Severn. The Romans brought the skills of reading and writing to Britain. The name Britain comes from the word Britanni, the Greco-Roman word for the inhabitants of Britain. The Romans mispronounced the word and called the island Britannia. The next topic is the Roman life. There were three different kinds of town in Roman Britain: the colonia, peopled by Roman settlers; the municipia, large cities in which the whole population was given Roman citizenship; the civitas included the old Celtic tribal capitals. Also, the biggest change during the Roman occupation was the growth of large farms called villas. The last two main topics of the first unit are the Celts and the Saxons. The Celts. Around 700 before Christ, the Celts began to arrive to Britain. They were tall and had fair or red hair and blue eyes. Probably came from Central Europe or further east from southern Russia and had moved slowly westwards in earlier centuries. The Celts are the ancestors of many of the people in Highland Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and Cornwall today. Also, the Celtic tribes were ruled by Druids. The Saxons. Bede said that around the 450 and 49 year, the first arrival to England of the Anglo-Saxons took place. They came from the three tribes, the Anglo-Saxon and Jutes, who themselves came from different parts of Germany and Denmark. According to Bede, the Angles settled in East Anglia, the Angles in southern England, and the Jutes in Kent and the island of Wight. The Saxons created institutions which make the state strong for the next 500 years. The King's Council, called the Witan.
Now let's go over to the Celtic kingdoms, and the first one is Wales. Wales is part of the United Kingdom. The capital, main commercial and financial center of Wales is Cardiff. Wales was one of the Celtic Europe's most prominent political and cultural centers. In 1039, Gruffydd ap Llywelyn was the first Welsh High King. He was also the last. Welsh kings after him were able to rule only after they had promised loyalty to Edward the Confessor, King of England. Now let's go over to Scotland. Scotland was populated by four separate groups of people: the Picts, Gaels, Britons, and Scots. As in Ireland and in Wales, foreign invaders increased the speed of political change. Vikings attacked the coastal areas of Scotland. Vikings settled on many of the islands: Shetland, the Orkneys, the Hebrides, and the Isle of Man southwest of Scotland. Slowly, the Earls of Orkney and other areas found it easier to accept the King of Scots as their overlord, rather than the more distant King of Norway. Now let's talk about Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, but is under the government of Ireland since 1920. In the late 1960s, riots broke out between Protestants and Catholics in Belfast and Londonderry. The violent decades that followed became known as the Troubles. At the beginning of the 1970s, the British government sent soldiers to Northern Ireland to restore peace and decided to rule Northern Ireland directly from London. When 13 unarmed demonstrators were shot during a protest in the streets of Londonderry on January 31, 1972, the incident became known as Bloody Sunday. Now let's talk about the British Empire. It started about the 1490s and ended around the end of the World War II. Most of Britain's colonies were ruling themselves independently by the late 1960s. Some contributions the British Empire made to the world are technology, literature, medicine, and philosophy. The 13 colonies, also known as the 13 British colonies, the 13 American colonies, or later as the United Colonies, were a group of British colonies on the Atlantic coast of North America. Now let's talk about American culture. The European roots of the United States originate with the English and Spanish settlers of colonial America during the British and Spanish rule. The English ethnic group contributed to the major cultural and social mindset and attitudes that evolved into the American character. Major cultural influences came especially from Germany. The use of English in the United States is a result of British colonization of the Americas, and the first wave of English-speaking settlers arrived in North America during the early 17th century. And now let's talk about modern Canada. The country's past might share similarities with its American, British, and French cousins, but it unfolds in a distinct fashion. It has navigated daunting natural and human designs of obstacles to survival. Archaeological evidence suggests that at least two great waves of migration brought native peoples to the Americas. The belief system of native peoples suggested that a close relationship with the land and animal kingdom that provide food and clothing. Canadians are quite aware of the complexity or their identities, the often conflicting interpretations of their past, and the different visions they hold for their future. Hello, Miss. My name is Cecilia Mariel Valladares and my partner is Ricardo Galvez.